Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, pull them apart, and give you the core insights. Today, we're stepping back into a really chilling moment in American history. Picture Texarkana, spring 1946. It's a town right on the Arkansas-Texas border, usually peaceful, but suddenly gripped by this unimaginable terror. We're doing a deep dive into what became known as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, all attributed to this shadowy figure they called the Phantom Killer. So we've gathered articles, historical accounts, even some personal stories. Our goal is to give you a solid, concise grasp of this mystery that honestly still lingers. We'll get into the shocking details, the investigation, which was frantic. You can imagine the sheer panic in the town, and the questions that still hang over Texarkana. Okay, let's unpack this. Where did it all start? That terror didn't build slowly, did it? No, it really didn't. February 25th, 1946. That's the date. The peace was just shattered. The first attack was on Jimmy Hollis, who's 25, and Mary Jean LeRae, 19. They were parked, on one of those secluded roads out in Bowie County, Texas. Suddenly, this armed man appears.
His face is hidden, covered by, like, a burlap sack with eye holes cut out. Some described it like a pillowcase. He forces them out of the car, beats Hollis badly with the gun, actually cracks his skull. Then he sexually assaulted LeRae using the barrel of the gun. He fled only when he saw headlights approaching. Miraculously, both of them survived. They recovered. But the descriptions of the attackers, they didn't quite match up, did they?
No, not entirely. And that caused some issues early on. LeRae said he was a light-skinned African-American man. Hollis, though, believed he was a tan white man, maybe around 30.
But they agreed on his height, about 6 feet tall.
Yes, they both agree on that, around 6 feet.
And the police reaction? It wasn't exactly what you'd expect now, was it?
Well, no. They were actually skeptical of Larry's story. They thought maybe she and Hollis knew the attacker, that they were protecting someone. They didn't officially connect this first attack to the later murders until May 11th, almost 3 months later.
Wow, so this initial horrifying assault, it wasn't immediately seen as the start of something bigger.
Not publicly, no. But things escalated quickly and changed drastically. The level of violence shifted.
How so?
Just about a month later. March 24th, 1946, that's when the first double murder happened. The victims were Richard Griffin, 29, and Polly Ann Moore, who was only 17. They were found in Griffin's car, again on a secluded road in Bowie County.
And how were they killed?
Both shot once, back of the head, with a .32 revolver. And chillingly, the bloodstains, they indicated they were actually killed outside the car, then put back inside.
Put back. Wow. Anything else?
Their pockets were turned inside out. Now, there were rumors back then that Moore had been sexually assaulted, but modern reports tend to refute that.
Okay, so one double murder. Did the pattern continue?
It did, and it got worse. Less than a month later, April 14th, the second double murder. This time, the victims were even younger. Paul Martin, 16, and Betty Jo Booker, 15.
And where did this happen?
Spring Lake Park, on the Texas side. Their bodies weren't even found together or near the car initially. Martin's body was on North Park Road. Booker's was found almost 2 miles away from him.
2 miles.
Yeah.
Dear God, same weapon.
Yes, a .32 again.
Yeah.
Same gun as the Griffin Moore murders. And according to one source, the young women in both these double murders, Moore and Booker, they were tortured and sexually assaulted before they died.
Tortured. This is escalating fast.
Absolutely. Martin was shot 4 times, Booker twice. Reports said they both put up a, quote, terrific struggle.
Betty Jo Booker.
Yeah.
You mentioned she was well known. Yeah, that must have hit the community incredibly hard. She was apparently very popular, a high school junior, involved in everything sorority, band officer, won awards for academics, writing, music. Her high school even closed early so people could go to her funeral. Hundreds attended. And her saxophone, the one she played that night.
It was missing, vanished, wasn't found until 6 months later.
So we've gone from assault to double murder to another possibly more brutal double murder. What was this telling investigators?
It painted this picture of someone becoming bolder, maybe more confident, certainly more violent. The randomness, the locations, It was terrifying.
And then the pattern shifted again, right?
It did. Just a few weeks later, May 3rd, 1946, the 5th murder. But this one was different. It happened at an isolated farmhouse over in Miller County, Arkansas, so across the state line.
A home invasion.
Essentially, yes. The victims were Virgil Starks, 37, and his wife, Katie Starks, 36. Virgil was killed. Shot twice in the back of the head through a closed window while he was just sitting inside reading the newspaper.
Shot through the window.
Yeah. Then Katie, she ran for the phone, and she was shot twice in the face.
Oh, my God, did she?
She survived. Incredibly. Despite horrific injuries, she managed to get out, ran to a neighbor's house for help.
That's unbelievable strength. Was it the same killer? Different weapon this time, you said.
Right, that was the puzzle. This time it was a .22 pistol, not the .32 used before, but they found tire tracks at the Starks farm that seemed similar to earlier scenes. So at the time, it was generally linked to the Phantom. Although it's interesting, by late 1948, the official stance changed, and authorities kind of disconnected the Starks case from the earlier double murders.
Any clues about motive in the Starks case?
Well, this is significant. There was apparently a large amount of cash in the house and money in Katie's purse. None of it was taken.
Not robbery, then.
Didn't seem like it. That led police to theorize the motive was, quote, sex mania. Something psychological driven by violence and control, not money.
That shift from lovers' lanes to a farmhouse, different weapon, possible different motive, plus spanning 2 states. This must have been a nightmare for law enforcement back then.
Oh, absolutely. Immense complexity. You've got city police in Texarkana, Texas, and Texarkana, Arkansas. You've got Bowie County Sheriff's Office in Texas, Miller County in Arkansas. Then the state police from both states got involved.
And the FBI, too.
Yes, even the FBI came in. It was a huge multi-agency effort. Some key names you hear are Bowie County Sheriff Bill Presley. His nephew, James Presley, later wrote a big book on the case. Texarkana Chief Jack Runnels, Miller County Sheriff W.E. Davis, Arkansas State Police Detective Max Tackett.
And that famous Texas Ranger.
Right, Captain Manuel Gonzalez, Lone Wolf Gonzalez. He really became the public face of the investigation.
Lone Wolf. Sounds like quite the character.
He definitely had a reputation. Some criticized him, called him a showman, said he took credit for others' work. Spent maybe a bit too much time charming female reporters.
A showman? How did that play out?
Well, there's this anecdote. Gonzalez and a reporter from Life magazine were apparently found at the Starks crime scene, snapping photos with flashbulbs.
Seriously? At an active crime scene?
Yep. Not exactly preserving evidence. It highlights maybe a different approach to policing back then, or perhaps just his style.
So aside from Gonzalez's antics, what were the actual investigation methods? What were they doing on the ground?
They were working incredibly hard, around the clock, questioned over 200 people, chased down hundreds of leads, though many turned out false. Gonzalez tried setting traps, like using teenagers and officers as decoys in parked cars, hoping to bait the killer.
Risky.
Very. They set up roadblocks, brought in a mobile radio station from the Arkansas State Police, even got a teletype machine for faster communication between the states, and rewards were offered. Started small, $500, but quickly jumped to over $10,000.
Did the rewards help?
Mostly generated noise, unfortunately, led to over 100 false leads, and even 9 false confessions they had to sort through.
So a massive effort, but hampered by jurisdictional issues, maybe some showboating, and just the difficulty of the case itself. What was this doing to the town? How were people coping? Coping's maybe not the right word. The town was terrified. That's where the name, the town that dreaded sundown, came from. It wasn't just a movie title. It was real. Especially after the Martin Booker murders, the panic just exploded. People literally feared sunset. They bought weapons, stayed locked inside at night.
You saw that reflected in stores, right?
Stores sold out instantly. Locks, guns, ammo, window shades, blinds, anything that might offer protection.
And that had its own dangers.
Absolutely. Texarkana actually became dangerous because everyone was armed and jumpy. Police had to use sirens, stand in their headlights, shout who they were, just so they wouldn't get shot by a nervous homeowner mistaking them for the Phantom.
And the fear spread beyond Texarkana.
It did. Nearby towns like Hope, Lufkin, Magnolia saw fear. Even further, like Oklahoma City, people were reportedly buying up guns and axes.
Wow. And rumors must have been flying.
Rampant. Absolutely rampant. Which just fed the panic and made the police's job even harder. Officials like Gonzalez and Sheriff Presley pleaded with the public to stop spreading rumors, but you know how it is.
Led to innocent people being accused, I imagine.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then you had the, let's call them amateur detectives.
Ah, the teenage sleuths.
Exactly. Some kids actually kept parking in secluded spots, hoping to catch the killer themselves.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It was. One girl apparently pulled a .25 pistol on a police officer she thought was the Phantom.
Good grief.
Another time, police chased down this high school athlete, shot out his tires because he was following a bus, acting suspiciously. Turns out, he thought he could catch the killer on the bus.
Gonzalez warned them off, didn't he?
He did. Issued a statement saying something like, "It's a good way to get killed."
Did the fear ever subside?
It lessened a bit after about 3 weeks passed, without another murder linked to the Phantom. But that deep-seated anxiety, that lasted all summer.
It's hard to fathom that level of collective fear driven by one person nobody could see or identify.
Which brings us to the name itself. The Phantom Killer. How did that stick? That came from J.Q. Mahaffey. He was the executive editor of the Texarkana Gazette back then. His daughter, Prudence McIntosh, wrote one of the articles we looked at. Mahaffey apparently just said, why not? If the SOB continues to elude capture, he certainly could be called a phantom, and it stuck.
A fitting name, given how little they truly knew about his appearance. We mentioned the conflicting descriptions from Hollis and Larry.
Right, 6 feet tall, the mask. But was he black? White? Young? Older? They just didn't have a clear picture. Could it have even been more than one person?
That was a question, definitely. Though the general consensus, then and now, leans towards a single killer. The ambiguity, though, it really hampered early profiling attempts.
But his methods, his M.O., that was more consistent.
Yes, generally. Attacking young couples, secluded areas just outside town, late nights, weekends mostly. These gaps between attacks, about 3 weeks. The cooling off periods.
And the .32 caliber weapon, mostly.
Mostly. Until the Starks case with the .22. That deviation was significant.
How did the investigators describe him personally?
They used words like shrewd, clever, baffling, cunning. Sheriff Presley called him the luckiest person I have ever known. Victims, like Katie Starks, presumably, and officers used terms like crazy, maniac, but also expert with a gun. He seemed controlled, yet explosively violent.
And we have that early psychological profile attempt, too. Dr. LaPalla.
Right, Dr. Anthony LaPalla, the psychologist from the Federal Correctional Institution there in Texarkana. His profile was pretty detailed for the time. He thought it was one killer for all 5 murders, put his age somewhere between mid-30s and 50, motivation, likely a strong sex drive, sadism involved.
Intelligent.
He thought so. Intelligent, clever, shrewd. Noted guys like that often slip away. LaPalla theorized the shift to the Starks' farmhouse was because the killer knew police were watching the lovers' lanes more closely.
Did he think the killer was local?
Not necessarily. He thought the killer knew the area well, but might not live right there. Could be leading a totally normal life somewhere else. Probably not a veteran, LaPalla thought. He emphasized the planning involved, believed the killer worked alone, told no one. And he predicted the killer might either move his crimes elsewhere or somehow overcome the urges.
There was also that controversial comment he made, reflecting the biases of the era.
Yes, it's important to include that for historical context. LaPalla stated he didn't believe the killer was black because, in his view, Negro criminals are not that clever. A statement that absolutely reflects the prejudice of 1946.
So a basic profile, a consistent M.O., but no face, no concrete identity, and nearly 400 suspects and leads to check.
Yeah, an overwhelming number. Sifting through all that, plus the false confessions, it was a monumental task.
But one name consistently rises to the top when people talk about suspects.
Definitely. Ewell Swinney. He remains the prime suspect for many.
Tell us about him. Who was Ewell Swinney?
He was 29 at the time, a known criminal, had a record for things like car theft, counterfeiting, burglary, assault, a career offender, basically.
How did he get connected to the Phantom Murders?
Through the work of that Arkansas State Police detective, Max Tockett. Tockett had noticed a pattern, stolen cars being reported around the times of the murders, often found abandoned later. Then, in July 1946, Tockett arrested Swinney's wife, Peggy. She was caught with a stolen car linked to this pattern.
And she talked.
She did, and she provided an incredible amount of detail about the murders, stuff that hadn't been released to the public. She flat out named Swinney as the Phantom Killer.
Sounds like a breakthrough. Case closed.
Not quite.
Oh.
Peggy. Well, she wasn't considered a reliable witness. Her story apparently changed across different interviews. And crucially, she later married Swinney. Under the law back then, that meant she couldn't be forced to testify against her husband.
So her testimony, potentially the key, became unusable.
Exactly. A major blow to the potential case against him.
Was there other evidence linking Swinney besides Peggy's initial statements?
There was circumstantial evidence, yes. Pretty compelling stuff, actually. Besides Peggy having the stolen car, Swinney himself reportedly said something like, "You want me for more than stealing cars?" when he was arrested. He seemed scared of being shot by police or getting the electric chair.
Anything more concrete?
Peggy apparently led police to a spot in the woods where Betty Jo Booker's body had been found. Police also found a work shirt in Swinney's room with a laundry mark. S-T-A-R-K.
Stark, like Virgil Starks.
Precisely. And they found slag in his room, like from welding, that matched materials at Virgil Starks' welding shop. Plus, Swinney had recently sold a .32 automatic Colt pistol.
That sounds pretty strong, even if circumstantial.
It does, but remember, Peggy's testimony was out, and without that direct link, or maybe a confession...
He was never actually charged with the murders.
Never. Not for the murders themselves.
So what happened to him?
He was convicted in 1947 as a habitual offender, mainly for car theft. Got life in prison. Later accounts suggest this was almost like an implicit plea bargain with lock him up for life on the theft charges to avoid the riskier murder trial, where acquittal was possible, but conviction meant the death penalty.
Did he stay in prison?
No, he actually got out, won an appeal in 1973.
He got out. Wow. What happened after that?
Sources conflict a bit. Some say he died in prison later. Others say he died in a Dallas nursing home in 1994.
But many involved in the case still believed it was him.
Oh, yeah. Lawmen, like Sheriff Bill Presley, Max Tockett, they were convinced Swinney was the Phantom. James Presley's book makes a strong case that Swinney was the guy.
It really shows the limits, doesn't it? Even with the prime suspect, getting that final legal closure can be elusive.
Absolutely. It leaves that shadow of doubt, that what if, which is partly why the case still fascinates.
Swinney's the big name, but there were other suspects, other leads that went nowhere. Oh, quite a few dead ends. There was a young man named Duty Tennyson, 18, university freshman. He actually died by suicide in 1948 and left a note confessing to 3 of the murders.
A confession.
Yes, but.
Yeah.
He was actually in Betty Jo Booker's high school band, but there was no other evidence linking him. And he had an alibi for the times of the crimes. So, likely a false confession, perhaps due to mental distress.
Tragic. Who else?
There was Ralph Bauman, 21, an ex-Army Air Force guy. He turned himself into the LAPD, said he thought he might be the Phantom, claimed he had fugue states, blackouts.
Did his story check out?
No, the timeline didn't match. And it turned out he'd been discharged from the military for being, quote, psychoneurotic.
Okay.
Remember Betty Jo Booker's missing saxophone? Police arrested a guy in Corpus Christi trying to sell a sax. He even had bloody clothes.
Sounds promising.
It was cleared later. Not the right guy, not the right sax.
Any others? This list seems long.
It is. An escaped German POW was briefly considered after he stole a car and tried to buy ammo in Oklahoma, but then he just vanished. Poof. Vanished into thin air, as the report said. Then there was a hitchhiker who carjacked someone and bragged about killing 5 people in Texarkana. Police doubted him, figured the real Phantom wouldn't be so loose-lipped.
Makes sense.
A local guy, Sammy, his tire tracks were found near a scene. Failed a polygraph. But it turned out he was just hiding an affair, not murder. He was cleared.
Right. The polygraph catching deception, but not the right kind.
And finally, a really strange one. Earl McSpadden. His body was found on railroad tracks. Injuries suggest he was already dead before being put there.
So another potential victim.
Maybe. The coroner ruled death at the hands of persons unknown. But local rumors speculated. Maybe he was the Phantom's 6th victim?
Yeah.
Or maybe he was the Phantom and he died by suicide or was killed by someone else. Pure speculation, though.
Just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing.
Decades later, this case still resonates so strongly. Why do you think it has such an enduring cultural impact?
Well, first, it's historically significant. The Texas Department of Public Safety once called it the #1 unsolved murder case in Texas history. That carries weight. Then there's the folklore aspect. It's often linked to the Hookman urban legend, you know, the story about the couple parking and the killer with a hook hand.
Right, I've heard that connection.
Yeah, even though there's zero evidence the Phantom used a hook, it just sort of got absorbed into that broader scary story tradition.
And the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
Exactly. The 1976 film and the 2014 remake. They're maybe not huge blockbusters, but they're cult classics. And incredibly, Texarkana Parks and Rec actually screens the original movie annually at Spring Lake Park.
The park where Martin and Booker were murdered?
The very same park. It's become this strange local tradition.
Wow, that's something.
And beyond the film, countless books, TV shows have covered it. The fascination just doesn't fade. Look at the newspapers. The Texarkana Gazette did a huge 24-page special section for the 50th anniversary in '96. The Dallas Morning News did big revisits in '96 and 2003. Texarkana even has an annual Phantom Ball, a charity event using the name.
A Phantom Ball, okay?
It really shows how the story is woven into the town's identity now. And people compare it to other big unsolved cases, right? Like Zodiac.
Yeah, you see those comparisons, attacking couples in secluded spots, the killer remaining unidentified. there are parallels.
It taps into that deep fear of the unknown, the random predator.
That personal connection you mentioned earlier, Prudence McIntosh, whose father coined the Phantom name. Her experience really highlights the lasting fear.
Yeah.
She grew up there. Remember, Texarkana is this mixed kind of Norman Rockwell, but also a bit rough. The little Chicago, she called it. Lax laws, fights, the state line, complicating things. And her personal story, years after the murders, she's a teenager. Her car battery dies late at night. And where is she stranded? Spring Lake Park? Exactly. She said the terrifying memories of the Phantom just flooded back instantly. Shows how deep that fear went, how it just stayed with people.
And she waited a long time to tell that story.
She did. Said she waited until everyone involved was dead. That speaks volumes.
So, officially, where does the case stand today? Cold case. The identity of the Phantom Killer is still unknown. Theoretically, the case is open, but realistically, it's cold. No new leads, no definitive answers after all this time.
What a journey. We've gone through the terror, the desperate investigation across 2 states, the suspects, the panic, and how this whole thing is still echoing today.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How can an unsolved mystery, something so terrifying, become such a core part of a town's identity? Part of folklore, influencing movies, books, even charity balls. What does that enduring fascination with cases like the Phantom Killer or Zodiac tell us about ourselves? Maybe it's about our deep need to find answers, to understand the things that scare us most, even when those answers just aren't there. Something to ponder.